Boa noite, pedimos todo mundo a sentar. Quem não lavou as mãos para a noite, as suas mitzvah, por favor.
Maybe Shamai should speak before the video. Because whatever his name is, Shliach is not ready.
Boa noite, pedimos todo mundo pegar os seus lugares. Boa noite. Bem-vindos todos que estão aqui, todos que estão também assistindo ao vivo no YouTube. Obrigado, Rabino Richard, ao Beit Chabad, Itaim, Rabino Oshil para dar esse lugar. Obrigado à nossa tradutora, que estamos agora. Nós sabemos que Sivan, Yom HaBoyer, não é dia qualquer. Interessante que tem um detalhe não muito conhecido, que Sivan, o REBE veio para Estados Unidos 2 vezes, não uma vez. Primeira vez, o famoso, que o REBE veio, Sivan Tovshin Aleph, saindo da Europa, saindo da guerra, mas o REBE voltou para a França em 1947, quando o REBE foi buscar a sua mãe. E o REBE foi de avião e voltou junto com a mãe dele 6 meses depois. O REBE ficou 6 meses na França e voltou com sua mãe depois de 6 meses em navio. E o REBE chegou a segunda vez, Chof Ches Sivan, Tovshin Ches Zayin, também Tovshin Zayin, também no mesmo dia, Chof Ches Sivan. E não era uma coisa que podia planejar, porque naquela época não tinha data exatamente de chegada, dependia dos ventos, do mar, das ondas, e o REBE chegou justamente no mesmo dia, Chof Ches Sivan. Isso só mostra que dentro do dia, Chof Ches Sivan, tem uma brocha muito especial, como a gente vai escutar, se Deus quiser, hoje à noite. Então, vamos começar com a moda da Astra, Rabino Shamai Ende vai falar algumas palavras. Esse problema, né?
Itaim.
Não chama o Shliach.
Conhecido que quando os Yidden estavam em Mitzrayim, os judeus estavam no Egito, eles tinham uma tradição que ia chegar o Redentor, aquele que ia tirar eles do Egito. Ele ia começar com a frase Pakod, pakad tietchem. Eu lembrei de vocês e tirar vocês em Mitzrayim. E isso era, na verdade, Moshe Rabbeinu, quando ele foi tirar o povo de Israel do Egito, ele usou a linguagem Pakod, pakad tietchem. Eu lembrei vocês. E o Midrash diz que pelo fato que Moshe Rabbeinu, ele tinha que tirar o povo do Egito com essa frase, Pakod, pakad, com Pei, começando com a letra Pei. Então, por isso, Moshe Rabbeinu, ou causa-consequência, Moshe Rabbeinu, quando tirou o povo do Egito, ele tinha exatamente 80 anos. E a Torá frisa isso aqui. O Moshe, Ben Shmonim Shana, Dabroi Paró, Moshe tinha exatamente 80 anos quando ele foi falar com Paró. Havia uma conexão, não era por acaso que ele tinha 80 anos, que isso estava ligado com a mensagem dele da redenção, que ele tinha que ter essa idade de 80 anos, que se demonstrava realmente a idade de Mashiach, a idade do Redentor. Nós sabemos que a data de Kafhet Sivan não foi apenas... Não foi apenas a data que o Rebbe chegou em Nova York, foi a data da salvação física do Rebbe, de perigo de vida. Naquele dia foi, na verdade, um segundo nascimento do Rebbe. O Rebbe nasceu novamente. Que aqueles que conhecem a história de o que aconteceu antes da chegada do Rebbe, o perigo que o Rebbe estava passando, que o Rebbe estava fugindo de cidade em cidade, até chegar onde que chegava os nazistas, o Rebbe ia para a próxima cidade, e a dificuldade que ele tinha para conseguir um visto para entrar nos Estados Unidos, ele conseguiu arranjar um cônsul que ele tinha um histórico bem antissemita que fez a maior dificuldade para ele não conseguir esse visto, ele teve que mudar para uma outra cidade. Enfim, todas as histórias que estão ligadas com a redenção do Rebbe não foi apenas uma história que o Rebbe finalmente chegou em Nova York e tinha Kafhet Sivan. Foi, na verdade, foi uma salvação física. O Rebbe realmente teve, entre aspas, a sorte de conseguir no último momento aquele visto que garantiu para o Rebbe a liberdade física de toda das garras dos nazistas. Nós sabemos que, infelizmente, o Rebbe tinha uma cunhada que não tiveram essa mesma sorte. E muitos judeus, infelizmente, que estavam na mesma situação, não tiveram a mesma sorte. Então, realmente, isso aqui foi uma data de uma liberdade, não somente uma liberdade que ele saiu da opressão, ele saiu realmente da pena de morte garantida, como realmente acontecia com os judeus de lá, que se encontravam naquela situação. Então, Koach Sivan é o dia que podemos dizer que o Rebbe veio para nós, não somente veio para as Américas. E quando o Rebbe chegou nas Américas, houve essa grande transformação do judaísmo americano em geral, que é a transformação do judaísmo mundial, como cada um pode ver no panfleto que cada um tem nas suas mesas, a história que começou a partir dessa data, Koach Sivan, começou realmente uma grande revolução espiritual, mas na verdade isso aqui foi o segundo nascimento do Rebbe. E esse ano, 80 anos depois, estamos comemorando essa data também no 80º aniversário da libertação do Rebbe, que isso realmente é o assunto de Pakad Tiatchem. Eu lembrei vocês, nessa data do dia de hoje, Rabino pergunta, tem um lugar aqui em cima, faz favor, alguém traz. Tem aqui um lugar aqui. Tem aqui um lugar, guardado. Não, está aqui, está melhor. Dá para ver, mas... Então, esse dia, nós estamos comemorando 80 anos do segundo nascimento, podemos dizer assim, do Rebbe. E da mesma forma que Moshe Rabbeinu, com 80 anos, quando ele comemorou 80 anos, ele conseguiu bedabrar o Paró, ele foi falar com o Paró, e ele trouxe a redenção de todo o povo de Israel. Temos certeza absoluta que depois desse ciclo de 80 anos, nós vamos ter grandes revelações. Isso que o Rebbe chegou para cá, para as Américas, na verdade, foi um começo de uma nova época, e nós estamos terminando agora um ciclo em Bigurot Shmonim Shana, quando nós temos uma força especial. Em 80 anos, nós completamos esse ciclo. Então, para nós, a comemoração hoje é uma comemoração múltipla. Além de comemorarmos a libertação física do Rebbe, além de comemorarmos toda essa renovação do judaísmo nas Américas, estamos comemorando uma data tão especial, 80 anos, que isso simboliza muita coisa. É um momento que nós acreditamos que é o início de uma grande redenção. Então, não vamos estender muito, que nós temos aqui um orador especial essa noite, e apenas para dar boas-vindas para todos, que realmente aqueles que vieram, nós sabemos as dificuldades que nós estamos passando no mundo inteiro, mas não poderíamos deixar passar uma data como essa, sem termos um Farbrenguen presencial, com todos os cuidados que nós estamos tentando ter aqui nesse momento, e vamos esperar que com isso nós vamos conseguir acabar nesse Farbrenguen, trazendo uma brachá especial para acabar com toda essa pandemia que assola todo mundo, e o Brasil especial, e trazer realmente a redenção particular para todos, a redenção geral de todo o povo de Israel, e que Deus realmente faça que que acabe, termine totalmente a epidemia do povo de Israel, e nós vamos sair daqui afeilado, uma escuridão tão grande, leor gadol, com uma grande luz. Nós sabemos que quando o Rebbe comemorou 50 anos da libertação, dessa data de Kafchet Sivan, o Rebbe mandou estudar um mamar, que o Rebbe distribuiu um mamar, que esse mamar fala da saída do Egito. O que tem a ver a saída do Egito nesse momento que nós não estamos agora comemoramos Pesach? Pesach já passou há um bom tempo, mas na verdade essa libertação está ligada com a saída do Egito, com a Geulah de Mitzrayim, com a redenção de Mitzrayim. E como o Rebbe começa aquele mamar, que nós vamos ver grandes maravilhas como resultado da saída do Egito. Nós estamos no anos de Arenu Plaot, que nós vamos ver maravilhas imensas, e que realmente a gente possa sair desse Farbrenguen, além da inspiração espiritual, mas que nós possamos trazer aqui embaixo a verdadeira redenção para todo o povo de Israel, a Geulah completa, com a vinda de Mashiach ainda hoje. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Shamai estão preparando um curto vídeo do Rebbe, de um Farbrenguen famoso de Yud Beis Tammuz Tovshin Memhei, um trecho onde o Rebbe fala sobre o Sirat Nefesh dos Rabbeim. Rabino Shamai mencionou as dificuldades que o Rebbe, que os dirigentes lá fizeram para o Rebbe vir para os Estados Unidos. É muito interessante. Um dos motivos, talvez, porque o Rebbe não veio junto como filho, que o Rebbe junto com o Rebbe anterior, porque eles pediram para o Rebbe anterior um visto especial, não visto regular, visto normal, visto comum. E pediram também para o Rebbe um visto comum. Mas o Rebbe anterior saiu com visto especial. E o problema foi o seguinte, que no visto, na aplicação que pediram no visto para o Rebbe comum, escreveram que o Rebbe é o grande Rabino, o grande sábio, que sabe dar aulas, etc. E depois, quando fizeram um visto especial, escreveram que o Rebbe é engenheiro elétrico muito especial, fez tal faculdade. E eles tinham medo que tenha uma contradição total. De um lado, você escreve uma aplicação, você escreve que o Rebbe é grande estudioso da Torá, e outro escreve que o Rebbe é grande engenheiro eletrônica. Então, acabaram decidindo que é melhor não misturar os dois. E depois que o Rebbe anterior já recebeu o visto e saiu, aí pediram também para o Rebbe de novo. E realmente, um dos problemas era que o pessoa do State Department, ele avisou, ele falou, não dá ele mandou uma mensagem negado, que tanta gente está sabendo agora para visitar o Rebbe. E o motivo porque foi negado justamente pela contradição das duas aplicações. E pode ser que a mensagem aqui, que é isso exatamente que Rav Sivan, conectar em cima e baixo, grande tzadik, grande Rebbe, na mesma hora pode trazer o Shekhinah, pode trazer a divindade dentro das coisas mundanas, dentro de engenheiro elétrico. Vamos ver o vídeo.
Was kommen wir hier in diese sibische Tier, in der Vater seiner aus der Kirchen startet werden in Askonis Figuris, Und das ist halt Pischel von Norach, ist das Konis Ziburis, noch Hecher von Cherossi Nasse. Lekamo Deis, und Lekamo Deis ist das Ede Psagdi. Danach aber Meise Sibische Tie hat übergegeben nach Heilig von das Konis Ziburis, hat das übergegeben Libnei Yechide, wenn sein Vater gewinnt Bechaim Chayossi Balmodei. Und gefragt, bis wann soll dort sein, hat ihm gesagt, bis Messias Nefesh. Was Lechero hat das nicht kein Pschad. Bis Messias Nefesh. Wir werden schon im Kitikuna. Und als gefühlt, wie es mir fühlt sich, als Pichuka Medina. Allah es kamen, wir kamen nicht in eine Schmowes. Hat gewartet, bis wann Bosse, Jovel, Jode, war kein Mann. Bis wann ist gekommen, Jode, und man hat gewusst, dass sie da eine Gseire, nicht eine Gseire von Gimel Averis, eine Gseire verbunden mit Kinder von Kindern, oder mit Kinder von Rabbonen, was sie darf mich anders sein Kinder. Nicht von der Gimel Linionen. Ist gegangen mit der Chatchila REBE, zu dem, was sie gewähnt, der Mechanech und der Chosh und Chulu, auf dem Sarah Pnim bei Sayom. Wo damals der Sarah Pnim gewinnt der Sarah Achitakiv, der stärkste Sar, was hat angeführt mit dem Zar. Der Sarah gewinnt nicht kein Ibiliker Chochem, die Dume Pulso. Wie Hashem der Bechlal Chochem nicht gewinnt. Und mit dem hat angeführt der Sarah Pnim. Und von jener Zeit. Und der Sarah Pnim ist gewinnt und gehabt auf sich, auf dem, was hat er Mechaner gewinnt. wo danach ist ein Aris von Chinuch, של Talmid, und jener schon gewohnt der Sarah Pnim, hat aber gelebt in derselben Stadt. Gegangen durch Chatchila REBE, gehabt, als da ist der Linie von Messias Nefesh, verbinden sich mit dem, was hat Mechaner gewinnt, nach Rosh Merushe, wie der Sarah Pnim dämmelt gewinnt, nach Rosh Merushe bei Anushis. Gemacht vergraben mit allen Jönen, Aidum und Fussam. Und hat dem gepeilt und mit dem geschmust und mit dem gerät. Soll Aris geben, Arische. Fragen wir, was mit Konton, auf etwas mit Wattel sein, die Gesehre. Und der Jener hat ihm gesagt, soll wissen sein, dass Agini wird das Verheim, Messias Nefesh, und dort hat gehabt, wo der Vater hat genannt, bis Messias Nefesh. Norach ist das Konis Ziburis, noch Hecher von Cherossi Nasse. Lekamo Deis, und Lekamo Deis ist das Ede Psagdi. Danach aber Meise Sibische Tie hat übergegeben nach Heilig von das Konis Ziburis, hat das übergegeben Libnei Yechide, wenn sein Vater gewinnt Bechaim Chayossi Balmodei. Und gefragt, bis wann soll dort sein, hat ihm gesagt, bis Messias Nefesh. Was Lechero hat das nicht kein Pschad. Bis Messias Nefesh. Wir werden schon im Kitikuna. Und als gefühlt, wie es mir fühlt sich, als Pichuka Medina. Allah es kamen, wir kamen nicht in eine Schmowes. Hat gewartet, bis wann Bosse, Jovel, Jode, war kein Mann. Bis wann ist gekommen, Jode, und man hat gewusst, dass sie da eine Gseire, nicht eine Gseire von Gimel Averis, eine Gseire verbunden mit Kinder von Kindern, oder mit Kinder von Rabbonen, was sie darf mich anders sein Kinder. Nicht von der Gimel Linionen. Ist gegangen mit der Chatchila REBE, zu dem, was sie gewinnt, der Mechanech und der Chosh und Chulu, auf dem Sarah Pnim bei Sayom. Wo damals der Sarah Pnim gewinnt der Sarah Achitakiv, der stärkste Sar, was hat angeführt mit dem Zar. Der Sarah gewinnt nicht kein Ibiliker Chochem, die Dume Pulso. Und wie Hashem der Bechlal Chochem nicht gewinnt. Und mit dem hat angeführt der Sarah Pnim. Und von jener Zeit. Und der Sarah Pnim ist gewinnt und gehabt auf sich, auf dem, was hat er Mechaner gewinnt. wo danach ist ein Aris von Chinuch, של Talmid, und jener schon gewohnt der Sarah Pnim, hat aber gelebt in derselben Stadt. Gegangen durch Chatchila REBE, er gehabt, als da ist erst der Linie von Messias Nefesh. Verbinden sich mit dem, was hat Mechaner gewesen, a Roche Mirusche, wie der Sarah Pnim Dämmelt gewesen, a Roche Mirusche bei Anushis. Gemacht vergraben mit allen Jönen, Aidum Fussam. Und hat dem gepeilt und mit dem geschmust und mit dem gerät. Soll Maris geben, Marische. Fragen wir, was mit Konton, auf etwas mit Wattel sein, die Gesehre. Und der Jener hat ihm gesagt, soll wissen sein, dass Agini wird das Verheim, Messias Nefesh, und dort hat gehabt, wo der Vater hat genannt, bis Messias Nefesh. Und er hat gegeben ein Papier, wo dort gewesen der Rischen, auf Farbrenguen, in dem Bienen, was gefunden, der Mistet von dem Sarah Pnim. Und danach hat gewusst, dass er mit Farbrenguen nach hinten Jeden mit der Bordung Peis und mit der Sirtu. Und was redet Rusche ist nicht, als mit Rusche ist, Zach Schupetzes. Da gerät Rusche ist mit allen Unionen, aber sie gewähren Labdaf keinen Akzent. Aber der gegangen in jenen Bienen und hat gesehen, was der Sarah Pnim geht reis, von den Bienen, ist gleich zugegangen zu dem Schehe, zum Schemer aller Psochim, und dann bewiesen dem Papier, was Neger reingehen in Bienen, der Scheher hat nicht verstanden, dem ganzen Linie, was tut. Man hat gewusst, dass dort nicht sein in Petersburg, nicht nur dort reingehen in den Bienen. Und das hat Bienen, was man dahinter kennen, nicht reingelost. Und Rische im Juche, da viel Goy, a viel Asar, Goldberg. Hat aber echt gewusst, dass das sich nicht Dinge, warum es Rische im Juche, und nicht wie kommt es an der Rische. Und ist reingegangen in Bienen und hat nicht gewusst, wo der Sarah Pnims Cheder gefühlt hat. Und ist gegangen und geblonget und gesucht, bis wann er gemusst fragen bei einem von den Goyim dort, wo sie gefühlt sich an der Cheder, wo das Gufe sich als Akone schenken mehr. Und reingegangen in den Cheder, da rausgenommen von dort die Papieren, wo sie gewähnt, wegen hat der Gesehre, aufgestellt dort in dem Stempel, hat die Gesehre-Bottel geworden, weggelegt zurück auf den Tisch, in dem Ort, wo sie liegen, der Gesehre-Abteile ist, wo seine Bottel geworden, und er ist gegangen vom Zimmer. Und er ist gegangen danach von Bienen. Und danach hat er gefahren nach Hause. Wo das nicht der Pschat hat, dass Jinien von Sechel war, Wohne war es Bore. Und es nicht der Pschat, dass Norden Poschet hat, drauf Kirch zu tun. Gehen an kein Geseres am Malchus. Befragt nach am Malchus, was Meschel bekippe, ist Alpi Medisch und Alpi Kabbalah und Alpi Muster und Alpi Sechel. Komm, gehen mehr nicht wie Asami, was begehrt von Malchus. Und das, was gegangen als von dem Melech, von Nossi Hadei, von seinem Vater, und dann gemacht war ein Schluch, Lodom, Kemese Mamash. Ist das gegangen, der Vater, aber wer da rumgelegt im Stempel, nach übergelegt die Papieren und bekommen Frieden dem Rische. Und dann noch gedacht, dem Goy, was sie gewähnt, dem Mechanik von Sarah Pnim, und dass sie gewähnt, unter der Ried, was beschaß meiste, gewähnt Taka, Ben Joche, der aber nie gewähnt Kinossi. Und unter der Schlich ist geworden, an Nossi, Kemese, bis Kemese Mamash. Bedug mir, wie gerät, wenn geht zu schlimme wie Dovi. Mir in Kasche nicht schnell, da berechnet, nicht geschneit, aber mit dir, beschaße, tut sich, oder die meiste, in mehr nicht wie ein Daberlador. Mehr nicht auch der, was tut die meiste. Okay, du, wenn geht, viele Schliche, die geht über mehr nicht die meiste, oder den Kirchenmeister, oder der ganze Mitzis, die gerät einmal Baruch, da alles war mich Schliches. Bis das geht, wenn ich allein, aber nicht sagen, dass sie dort zwei im Loch, nicht was sagen mit sie. Beschaß hat viele, wenn das doppelte Schliches, nicht dass sie dort zwei im Loch. Punkt, also, wir können sagen, dass zwei Menschen sind mekadisch die Ische. Mekadisch mehr nicht wie ein, nie, wie eine. Und wer das Mekade dem Schalia, was sie kommt aus Zeir an, darf durch den Ruf, was der Yadam Shalei, was Bishas Meister, ist der Shluche Shalodem Kemeise, bis Mamosh, und das ist dieselbe Linie, ist nicht in zwei. Was ist der Fund der Limut bei der Gela Anoshim Kerkeinu? Der Ched das Retzach wegen Anoshim Yisrael, Retzach wegen Bnei Yechidei, und es Retzach wegen Ameister, was getan Messias Nefesh, was Messias Nefesh in der Pshat bepashtet, als wird es Messias. Und das ist der einfache Robtag, Messias Nefesh, nimmt sein Nefesh und geht es so. Und das ist der Robtag von Messias Nefesh. Wer soll die Schale, was kommen davon herablernen an Noshim Kerkeinu? Und mit drüber, der Balschente sagt, wie bald das Aida hat, oder die Meise, wird das Verrem am Meere der Bahn Hagossei, dazu darf bei ihm zukommen, was darf tun. Wo das Alpi Omer, Pschassiden sein von der Darge ihm zu wohnen, ist er sicher, als er Ben Shalahav, ist er haben Medisch lebnei in alle Chamisha Dvorim, ist er nicht der Pschat in der Mischne, aber man darf warten bis noch 120 Jahre. Als er Medisch bekochen, ist Bescheid der Av lebt und der Ben lebt und sie leben zusammen 20 Jahren, hat er schon damals der Mine von Chochmes war, als er der Pirisch Apostel und als er Barloche und als er der Messias in Tebo Heilim, a viele Baniten. A viele Baniten sein in der Darge von Avodim, ist Eved Melech, ist Echet Melech. Wenn er darf Ayid wissen, als Motem gesagt, hat sich allein gehabt, als hat das Shliach von Malke Shalelo, wird der Shluche Shalodom Kemeisei und noch mehr Shluche Shalodom Kemeisei Mamesh. Wer sagt in die Kotetere, Baruch und Masbir, auf Isaiah, auf Pikabola und aber da darf nicht ankommen zu den Mosim und sei das, das ist Pschuta Shahalocho und das ist der Pastus von dem Messias. Benela hat noch trefft sich mit Nitin und bekommt auf sie ein Spor und rechnet, will sich heiraten, das was sich getroffen mit Nitin, ist der Fall, was darf sich etwas lernen von dem Nitin. Iden seine beschaffen geworden, eine Saticho Lagoye. Id der Rebstadt beschaffen, Iden, als soll machen, richtig die Welt, nicht nur die Welt bei sich in Beisa Knesset und in Beisa Medisch, und zwischen Iden nur eine Saticho Lagoye, zu jeder Volk und zu allen Völkern.
Quero agradecer aos Shluchim de Yeshiva que prepararam tudo isso à noite, esta noite junto com a Yeshiva, e eles prepararam este Farbrenguen famoso de Beit Shamai com legendas em português, e vão mandar um link, Yeshiva vai mandar um link para toda a comunidade para poder assistir este vídeo inteiro com a família, talvez aqui montamos a outra oportunidade. Segundo prato está sendo servido. L'chaim. Farbrenguen hoje, além de ser Yom Abor Sivan, hoje estamos também alguns dias antes de que voltamos. Vamos ter a honra de escutar algumas palavras da honra que voltamos de Rabino Moshe, Rabino Zalman Zayins, por favor.
L'chaim. Falar uma coisa de Tato Benequim, do Rebbe pai da gente é o filho do Rebbe. O que quer dizer essas palavras quando a gente fala que o Rebbe é nosso pai e a gente é o filho do Rebbe? Está explicado o que quer dizer pai? O Rebbe traz de Itaim no Peribês, que o filho vem de um pai. E toda a existência, todo o DNA de um filho é o pai. Toda a essência de um filho é um pai. Isso é um filho. E assim também, a gente sabe que o Rebbe, com a gente, ele estava ligado com a gente de uma forma... Isso que a gente fala que o Rebbe é nosso pai, é porque a ligação do Rebbe com a gente é de uma forma... Uma ligação não baseada em lógica, não baseada em algo que a gente fez por ele, mas porque a essência do Rebbe, a gente está, como o Rebbe traz no prevês, nós estamos realmente, nossas almas estão ligadas com ele. E assim também, ele manda a essência dele para a gente. Nossa ligação dele com ele, com a gente, com ele, e ele com a gente, é uma forma que está acima de... Não é uma coisa de interna, uma coisa essencial de cada um de nós, que não está baseada em nada, é pura ligação íntima, que tem tudo, como a gente vê histórias. Eu vi faz pouco tempo, uma vez o Yom Klein estava sentado, o secretário do Rebbe, ele tinha acabado de falar com o cunhado dele, que acabava de chegar de Nova York. Ele entra no carro do Rebbe, o Rebbe pergunta para ele o que o teu cunhado te contou de novo, que novidade? Ele acabou de falar. Eu não contei nem por Rebbe que ele estava sentado com o cunhado dele. De onde o Rebbe sabia, porque o Rebbe sente. É uma ligação íntima. É uma coisa, como a gente sabe, que a Lamai estava dada acima da lógica, uma coisa que ele é a nossa vida, que ele manda a nossa vida e ele sabe das coisas da gente, como a gente sabe também. Várias histórias que o Rebbe no futebol estava sentado uma vez, estava sentado na Rússia nos bons tempos, quando ele estava preso. Ele pensou, escreveu uma carta por Rebbe, depois quando ele chegou de Londres, quando ele saiu da Rússia, ele recebeu a resposta. A ligação é uma ligação que não está baseada em palavra, não está baseada em ação, é porque isso é a vida. Isso tudo é Milamai Lolamato. É Milamai Lolamato. Que assim é, pela verdade, do Rebbe que ele sente para a gente, etc. Mas a gente sabe que também tem unha de Milamato Lamaila. Um filho também tem que sentir um filho. Tem pai, mas o filho, como o Oshil está explicado para Israel, o Rebbe está em vários lugares. O filho está escrito que o filho é a cara do avô. O filho é a perna do pai. O que é a perna do pai? No Pentateuco ele explica que o filho, ele anda pelo pai. O que o pai quer, o que o pai deseja, o que o pai sente, isso é um filho. A ligação o filho tem perante o pai é numa forma que ele também está ligado numa forma, porque isso é ele. ele sabe que já ele quer fazer o pai feliz. Ele quer já que a vida dele é o pai, ele é a continuação do pai. Então ele quer deixar o pai feliz, deixar o pai feliz. Isso com o rosto, isso com o filho. Assim também, nessa noite de Sivan, que é a preparação também para aqui voltamos. Como que tem que ser a nossa ligação? A gente tem que cobrar, a gente vai para nosso pai. Muito bom, né? Fez grandes nisso, me cuida da gente, se preocupa com a gente. A pergunta é que a gente tem que se perguntar numa noite que a gente está sentado junto, se questionar, falando para mim também, não também. Para mim, estou falando isso, Raim. Quando que é a minha ligação com o Rebbe? Quando que eu fiz um check-out, eu fui fazer um barco Yeshiva estudou teira, mas ele faz porque também ele quer estar ligado, ele quer, sei lá o quê. A gente tem que saber que a nossa vida, não é? Isso é a nossa vida. A nossa vida é fazer o que o Rebbe quer. Nossa vida é deixar o Rebbe feliz. A gente tem que procurar quando que eu posso deixar o Rebbe feliz. Eu estou no Mitzvah, não posso muito fio. Você lembra que tem sexta-feira? Você estuda o Rama, no final do dia, você acorda cedo, porque isso é a minha vida. Eu no Rama não faço um peso na minha vida. Eu dou graças a Deus que eu estou ligado e eu posso cumprir o livro da Rama. Eu posso, graças a Deus, a Ritas. Isso é a minha vida. Não estou fazendo favor para ninguém. O favor é que eu estou vivendo. Vida, o Rebbe manda vida e isso sou eu. Então, nesse dia de Sivan, por exemplo, aqui montamos, a gente tem que começar a saber que isso, a gente tem que começar, o Rebbe pensa da gente, o Rebbe faz da gente. O Shaila, quanto é? A pergunta que a gente tem que se perguntar é quanto que eu vivo isso. Se eu faço para mais um ponto, nossa, um rosto que eu fiz, a gente faz porque, não porque eu sou um rosto, porque isso é eu. Automaticamente sou um rosto. E por isso que eu estou cesado, eu posso sentar ver um Farbrenguen do Rebbe, não tenho pega um Farbrenguen, estuda um Sikha, quantos Sikhas eu estudei para Shamai. E mais uma coisa que é neguei, especialmente isso é meu carro, isso é o principal meu assunto aqui. Unha de rino. A gente vê no Rebbe aqui, quer dizer rino, um pai para filho, tem que ser filho rino. Isso é pai e filho. Eu me lembro, a mim próprio, muitas vezes, fui pegar a tzedoka no Rebbe na moedas. O Rebbe deu no dedo, não sabe que era na mão dos dedos. O Rebbe falou para mim, lega lá em Pushka, vai colocar no Pushka. E o meu irmão pequeno, de Ridas, ele não queria pegar o dólar. O Rebbe se levantou da cadeira e colocou a mãozinha na mão dele, o dólar. E assim muitas e muitas coisas que a gente vê nas histórias, que o Rebbe, faz pouco tempo, um vídeo passou uma menina com uma boneca. O Rebbe colocou o dólar na mão da boneca. O Rebbe Grão foi falar para o Rebbe, ela é uma buba, ela é só uma boneca. O Rebbe colocou a mão na boneca, porque para criança é importante. O que quer dizer? O Rebbe educou que rino não quer dizer uma coisa a mais na vida. Rino não quer dizer que eu chego para o filho, tudo bem. Como o Rebbe traz na IME, que uma pessoa tem que pensar no filho meia hora por dia. Aqui não conta o número, mas não. Eu perguntei como que está, como não está. Ficou que o filho está contente, vê na cara dele, vai até o trás, fica até o fim. Rino não é, eu mandei para a escola, mandei para o Yeshiva, agora eles se virem. Rino quer dizer que você está em cima, o Rebbe está em cima. Deu dólar para o filho, o Rebbe falou, ele busca, vai. E ele ficava olhando, porque ele falava, ele deu dólar, vai embora, já deu dólar. Ficava olhando que deu busca para ele colocar. Porque ele precisava ficar olhando. A gente sabe que o Rebbe faz a vida do Rossi vem ensinar, que a gente tem que ir como um pai. O Rebbe é um pai para a gente, ele quer educar para a gente, que a gente tem que ir até o fim. O que está acontecendo com o filho? Se ele está contente? Se ele está estudando? Não, porque eu tenho que fazer, estudar com o filho. Porque é meu filho. Sim, é tua vida, é tua continuação, é você. Você não está fazendo mais que obrigação. Então tem que se dedicar até o fim. E não só, mandei, está tudo bem, Farbrenguen, o que você fez? Como você vai? Não só em luchas, em coisas espirituais, em gastos. Como que ele volta para casa? Ele vai se virar. Filho de 13, 14 anos vai se virar. Isso também é Lubavitch, isso também é o Rebbe que a gente se preocupa, isso se expressa aqui. O Chaim, para a gente realmente, não só falar que o Rebbe é grande, para a gente ver que a gente tem um Sidim, que a nossa vida é o Rebbe, e ele nos influencia dia a dia em toda a nossa vida, o Chaim.
שכך, זלמן, Existe Sikha do Rebbe de Toshin Memches, muito interessante, onde o Rebbe fala que ele mesmo, o Rebbe próprio, não se envolveu, nem que corte, tanto o Mashiach, até chegar para os Estados Unidos. Então, o Sivan, de certa maneira, é quando começou essa reta final, a campanha de chegada do Mashiach, que chega nesses dias. Para trazer o Mashiach, e toda esta cor, é a cor da Forças Samaionas, de espalhar Hassidus em todo lugar. Vamos convidar Rabino Moshe Libersohn para falar sobre a espalha Hassidus entre as pessoas e trazer Yidden para o Rebbe. Chaim.
Itaim. Estava procurando hoje alguma explicação. Por que demorou tantos anos para revelar a festa de Sivan? Por que nos primeiros anos não foi comentado esse assunto? Nem os Hassidim não sabiam exatamente como que foi, e até o próprio Rebbe também não fez nada dessa data. E fiquei curioso, por que demorou tantos anos? Talvez tem... No contras que o Rebbe distribuiu para o Sivan, ele traz, se olha lá, traz como que dois assuntos. O que é o dia de hoje? Primeiro, como o Shamai comentou antes, que o dia da Tzol, que salvou o Rebbe chegou nos Estados Unidos. Se poderia pensar, talvez tenha sido uma forma que Hitler e Moshe queriam acabar com o povo. Então, no momento que salvamos a cabeça, acabou. O holocausto acabou e agora começa a nascer uma nova luz. Quando o Rebbe chegando, o mundo começa a nascer novo. Mas o Rebbe também, lá no prefácio, na Zomer, traz que o Matnufo Hadosh, o momento novo de Lubavitch. Para poder entender um pouquinho esse momento novo, uma curiosidade talvez, o que ninguém pensou antes dos próprios Rebbeim? A forma de como fazemos missões. Você não vê nos Rebes antes de acender as velas de Hanukkah, acender na rua. Você está viajando, você olha para o cara do lado, você começa a procurar o Yehudi, você começa a ver se o vizinho tem as mesuzas, se todo mundo... Todo esse movimento maravilhoso que o Rebbe criou, por que ninguém veio com essa ideia antes? E nos próprios Rebbeim, os Shluchim do Baal Shem Tov eram grosso tzadik na história. Já o nosso Rebbe escolheu todo mundo para ser Shliach. Por que todo isso não tinha vindo para o mundo dessa forma? Poderíamos pensar, o Rebbe encontrou um caminho como deixar os Hassidim religiosos. Imagina, assim, enquanto iluminam, seria difícil. Agora, você tem um Beit Chabad, você tem que chegar a fazer a tefila, você tem que colocar tefila, tem que colocar no, sabe? Você começa a ter uma delícia, virou muito mais fácil. Você vai em missões, você vai aqui, vai lá. Quando cai Shabbat, até fica mais devagar o Rosh Hashanah, porque não tem missões. E assim vai. Todas as festas são uma forma de como os Hassidim podem viver. Isso é Lechaim. Tem uma carta do Rebbe anterior que ele diz que, explicando para o genro, que significa esse conceito que o Alter Rebbe traz, que Matan Torah não poderia... Aconteceu só na primeira parte do mundo, que sim, na Europa, na Ásia, não sei, no que não foi não poderia ter tido uma tantoide de Hatzikadura Tarte. O que significa esse conceito? O que Hashem não chegava lá? Lá o Friedrich Rebbe explica que é igual ao corpo. O corpo, a parte de cima tem Begilui, as partes mais importantes do corpo. O corpo tem vitalidade no corpo todo, só que para reveladamente as partes de cima, elas são diferentes. O que quer dizer, em outras palavras? Que na parte de baixo, esse Hatzikadoratem não estava pronto ainda para receber essa luz, para se converter nos Estados Unidos em uma luminária que vai salvar o mundo inteiro, o Yiddishkeit. Vemos isso que é 10 goles que tiveram em Lubavitch. E só sobre o último é falado América nicht anders. Quer dizer, os Estados Unidos, ele tinha uma coisa totalmente diferente. O sonho dos Estados Unidos era diferente. O trabalho para levar lá, como é conhecido, que existe dois tipos de dificuldade. Existe o voo ao Itaim, existe aquela dificuldade. Todas as histórias, sempre passamos por momentos de Mitzrayim, de aperto. Mas a Nidoch em Libersohn, a riqueza, é totalmente nos Estados Unidos. Quando o Yehudi começou a ir muito bem, aí começa talvez a assimilação, aí começa uma dificuldade a que o mundo aceite essa luz nova. E isso acontece em Sivan. Quando o REBE chega lá e a partir de agora os Estados Unidos começam a ser um clique para transmitir essa luz. E, em outras palavras, como o REBE traz na cifra de Sivan, que é uma luz tão grande que consiga pegar do mais baixo para poder carregar o mundo todo. Se fosse talvez de cima uma luz, não conseguiríamos, não duraria bastante. Agora foi dada de baixo, já é totalmente diferente. E esse trabalho, essa missão de conquistar o Hatzikadoratem, levar o mundo à vinda do Moshe, foi dado para cada um de nós. O REBE nos quis participar nesse processo. Quando ele diz Shlach lecho anoshim, manda o Shluchim, Shlach lecho ledaitcho. Aliás, uma coisa interessante, o REBE não criou essas franquias, todas igualzinhas, todos os Beit Chabad, todos os Hassidim fazendo missões da mesma forma. Não, cada um faz do jeito dele, com os heróis do REBE, mas cada um tem que estar brilhando. Cada um tem que encontrar na vida, como o Rabino estava comentando antes, todos os dias viver com essa missão, não importa o que estamos fazendo da vida, que nos dedicamos, saber que conquistar essa parte do mundo hoje já é possível. O mundo já está pronto para trazer esse Moshiach. Como o REBE traz na Sikha, em Bayeshes, que o fato que foi revelado em tantos lugares, a Kedushit, isso mostra que o mundo está pronto. Então, uma obrigação de cada um de nós pensar nisso e saber que fazemos parte desse mérito que o REBE nos deu em Sivan, de conquistar, levar o mundo para o Moshiach. Uma vez escutei um Farbrenguen do review aqui na internet, que ele disse assim que tzadikim é doimim leboido. Então, assim como com Hashem nos conectamos com 3 coisas, alatoiro, alavoido, aquilo chasodim, também todo Hossi tem que ter isso muito em mente. Alatoiro, nossos estudos que os heróis que o REBE nos mandou estudar, não podemos ter nenhum dia que passa sem estudar a Torá do REBE, se conectar um pouco, alguns momentos do dia, poder estudar e poder transcender, para poder ter aquela inspiração para poder conquistar o mundo, para não se perder na missão. Avoido, filho, conexão, saber que os nossos problemas, o REBE está todos os dias com nós, e nós podemos, só olhando uma foto do REBE já soluciona metade de todos os problemas, não metade. Só olhar para a foto já se conecta com ele, já está solucionado. E Milos Hassodi é conquistar esse mundo com missões. Então, quando nós estamos comemorando hoje uma data tão especial como o Sivan, podemos falar que o REBE nos está dando a oportunidade para todos os dias viver com essa missão, viver com essa sensação que temos que fazer alguma coisa para o mundo estar mais iluminado. O mundo já está pronto. Que possamos ver a revelação do REBE, se Deus quiser. Lechaim.
Lechaim, Rabino Moshe, obrigado. Shliach. Nós vamos ver agora um curto sikha, o famoso Chof Sivan Tovshin Nun Aleph. Quem pode esquecer? Naquele ano, o Rebbe foi para o Oshil e depois, na volta, naquela época, eles começaram a fazer uma brocha especial para o Rebbe no dia Chof Sivan. Faziam isso Yud Aleph Nissan, o Chossid dava uma brocha para o Rebbe em nome de todo mundo. Yud Aleph Nissan, também Yud Aleph Kislev, e os últimos anos fizeram também Chof Sivan Nun Aleph Nun. E aquele ano o Rebbe foi para o Oshil, e depois o Rebbe falou um sikha, e o Rebbe ia distribuir o Kuntras Chof Sivan. E as pessoas acharam que o Rebbe estava no Oshil, que o Rebbe estava jejuando o dia inteiro. Então, depois de Mincha, Maire e Sikha, ainda distribuir mais algumas horas, distribuir encontros, o Rebbe ia ficar de pé mais algumas horas. Então, o Gabai anunciou que já que não está pronto ainda os livros, vão fazer um pequeno hafsok, um pequeno intervalo, e logo depois o Rebbe vai distribuir os contrasem. E acharam assim, o Rebbe vai subir para o quarto dele, o Rebbe vai comer alguma coisa talvez, quebrar o jejum, e depois o Rebbe vai poder distribuir o contras em cima, no mesmo lugar onde o Rebbe distribui os dólares. Então o Gabai anunciou que infelizmente não está pronto. Então o Rebbe foi para o Bime, o Rebbe falou, então vamos fazer uma continuação, e começou uma nova sikha. Quer dizer que o Rebbe ia ficar mais um tempo. Foi naquele sikha que o Rebbe falou, que o Rabino Moshe falou, a senhora Goldberg Lubavitch, que Lubavitch teve 10 Goldbergs, o segundo sikha, e depois, logo que o Rebbe começou a fazer a sikha, de repente as caixas começaram a sair, porque já estava pronto, e o Rebbe deu o contraste. Agora vamos ver esta cena um pouquinho.
Shade call shade all on Nash and Sheen and women and with the night. The lady of things is wrong, all on Nash, night of our nothing but the rocker, the Messiah, Cantina, Lecture, the Beretta, and Messiah, Zoom, Portion, the Rufus, Gaspis, was on the Kuppel, Lincoln, Babbitt, Shliach, and Baptist down.
Pizza, allemaal met een dood, als ze een goede dag verschieten. Diese waren nicht auf der ganzen Zoll, der Tonnen von jedem Sache.
Zum Askiros von Langford ist das eine Gemeinde, die wir kennen. Also sehr wichtig, kommt der Reise der Umlaut ankommen, der Dienst durch seine Hefsig von der Ehre hat und schon. Und nachdem wir verwendet, dass uns ein Geld jetzt wegen der Jahre aktuell Kunden ist mit dem Geld und Stock.
Vocês podiam ver, no lado da esquerda do Rebbe, teve o Libersohn, o Esdras Noshim das mulheres, Esdras Noshim do lado esquerda, onde estavam as caixas. No segundo que o Rebbe começou a falar, que perceberam, logo começaram a tirar o vidro, começaram a fazer muito barulho para mostrar que os livros já estão lá, mas o Rebbe falou por mais 7 minutos. Antes de nossa visita, Rabino Feller, vamos pedir algumas palavras de Rabino Weidman, por favor. Com luz seria bem melhor.
תודה רפל, הקובץ, hoje à noite, Rabonim, Shluchim, Achai e Riai, temos aqui convidado especial de fora, então não é momento aqui de se prolongar, apenas uma pequena história para a gente se colocar no mundo pouquinho. Saiu alguns anos atrás homem na França que estudou com o REBE na Sorbonne, na mesma classe. Era engenharia elétrica, mas era curso de matemática. E este homem conta coisas interessantes. Ele conta a primeira coisa que jamais viram o REBE olhar para o professor. Sempre olhos para baixo com o livro. Nunca viram ele olhar para o professor na aula e sempre sabia a matéria perfeitamente. Qualquer pergunta, depois ele conta a este homem, como era 1939 na Sorbonne, na França, ele com mais um colega da classe, eles iam, durante o final de semana, comprar comidas no interior de Paris lá e voltavam em segunda, vendiam isto. Assim sobreviviam, eles faziam dinheirinho. So, segunda, eles perdiam a aula. O REBE sempre dava as suas anotações. E, normalmente, um aluno faz anotações curtas. Bem curtas do que o professor fala. Anotações. O REBE escrevia a aula inteira. Não sabe como, ele tinha um grande coração, se lhe conta. Então, cada terça-feira, o REBE entregava as suas notas para ele saber a matéria. E chegou o momento das provas finais. A prova era uma prova muito difícil, no final do ano, e normalmente na Sorbonne são 3 horas para fazer a prova, mas esta vez os professores falaram, vamos dar para os alunos 5 horas. É algo bem profundo, tem que sentar, pensar como se deve para poder responder. Começou a prova, todo mundo, meia hora depois, o REBE entrega a prova. O envelope, naquela época, era várias páginas, e eram muitas perguntas e tem que responder. O professor recebe o envelope, olhou para o REBE e falou, você é mágico? Se falou assim, um pouco ofendendo, você é mágico? É possível, meia hora. Ele abriu o envelope, ele viu que está tudo respondido. realmente tudo que escrito, páginas e páginas, impossível materialmente fazer isso. Aparentemente, depois abriram, não só que viram que o Rebbe respondeu tudo, mas com excelência, tudo, na verdade, acertou todas as respostas perfeitamente, de toda a classe perfeitamente. Deve ter chegado ao reitor, na verdade, estas palavras, o professor um pouco ofendeu este aluno, Libersohn. Então, o reitor chamou o professor e falou: acho que você deveria, com as notas que estamos vendo aqui, você deveria pedir desculpas. E cá, quando chegou o momento dos treinos, que cada um recebia, não sei se um diploma, ou se uma nota, ou se um boletim exatamente em público, o professor chamou o Rebbe e publicamente falou que ele se desculpa. Deu esses treinos, deu o boletim lá, com as notas e tudo. Mas ele falou: eu tenho uma pergunta, como você fez? Tá bom, eu falei mágico, como você fez isso? O Rebbe respondeu na frente de toda a classe: nosso povo, nós temos o Talmud. Eu falo na linguagem, nós temos o Talmud. Quem conhece isso, lá tem tudo que estamos aprendendo. Tudo lá, tudo está lá dentro. Escolha.
Muito, muito obrigado. Agora estamos com grande honra de ter conosco o Jacob de visita, que veio especialmente, não é a primeira vez que ele vem, já estava aqui, Rabino Mendel, para aqueles que não conhecem ele, Rabino Mendel é um pouco milagreiro, já vinha de fazer milagres. Não sei se posso falar agora, talvez depois de Farbrenguen. Então, grande honra, Rabbi Feller, please.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Goldberg. I didn't understand what you said, but don't believe everything you hear. Unless it was... I understood some of the speeches before. The good news is that I didn't understand all of it, but the bad news is also that I didn't understand all of it. The good news is they offered me to listen to some translation. The bad news is I didn't take it. The good news is that the Hebrew pieces I understood. So I think my speech, like I told them I wouldn't say any speeches, but I think we cut down some time so that we could focus on what we have to focus. Now I understood that you said the word oidach. I don't know what it is. I wasn't being honored. I didn't bring any money over here. I think this is where you're supposed to come to get the money, not get the. Anyway, but the oidach part I also don't understand because I come from a city that has the same name as this. So really, I'm a local. Which I once had it was actually in Sivan, it was in Topshin Lamed Hay, and there was the first bilingual Tanya was printed. There are pictures, you may have seen it, that ever gave it out on the front doorstep of 770. So anybody who came from an English-speaking country, whoever was there from Brazil didn't get it. But if you came from an English-speaking place outside of New York, that ever gave all adults an English Tanya. It wasn't a lot, and the children from those places got a pocket Tanya. So a Bocher brought me up. It was a few days after Shavuos, and then the Rebbe asked me, "Who's dein Tate? Where's your father?" And I answered the Rebbe, in St. Paul. That's how I said it. I didn't know yet that that's a bad word. I only learned that later. So the good news is that I could call it Twin Cities because that's what it's called. But I don't know what you guys do over here. As a matter of fact, when I was getting ready, some people come together to celebrate a day associated with an individual, right? The Rebbe said this on several occasions. He said it about his birthday a few times. But the Rebbe always answered that if it's going to increase Yiras Shamayim, and if it's going to bring us to a greater level, it's a good thing. And regarding this very day, in Tufshin Mentes, it's interesting. Everyone is aware of the history that we really didn't know about the significance of this day till about Tufshin Mendel, when the letters of the previous Rebbe, of the Rebbe's Rebbe, were printed, and suddenly lo and behold, there's a letter to a certain chassid who lived in Massachusetts. His name was Rabinowitz, that the Rebbe and the REBBETZIN arrived. And we saw this letter, we knew the date. And Tufshin Hay was the first time that Chassidim really Farbrenguen. There was a small Farbrenguen in the Cheder Sheni. The Cheder Sheni, for those who are familiar with 770, is like the annex. It's like there's all upstairs, there's the shul upstairs. That's all that it used to be. Then there's a little room on the side, an auxiliary room. That's where the Farbrenguen was. But in Tufshin and Vav, as is well known, famously, the Chassidim got together, made a Farbrenguen, they gave mashke, and the Rebbe spoke the Shabbos before Chav Chassidim, a famous sicha, which we'll try to share some of the points here. And the Rebbe spoke about how Fatzah Samayonis, we'll get to all that in a moment. But after that sicha, Rabbi Meir Harlech, who was a little, he wasn't sure he was going to do it, he actually got up and he went to ask the Rebbe. They had brought a bottle of mashke beforehand. The Rebbe gave him a bottle of mashke, and he said, "Now there's going to be a Farbrenguen to commemorate the anniversary of the arrival of the Rebbe in America." And the Rebbe corrected him, or shall I not use the word correction? But the Rebbe added, and the REBBETZIN, Ish Ubeisai, the establishment, the home of what the Rebbe stands for, and that is so significant. The whole household of what the Rebbe is arrived on that day. The Rebbe spoke about it that year. In Tufshin and Test 3 years later, the Rebbe spoke also on the Shabbos before, the Shabbos after. We'll relate to some of this. But one of the expressions that the Rebbe used when he was speaking about why is it important to Farbrenguen on this day, he says, and in the past 3 years, we have reached the point of it being the Shaloisha Shnei Chazaka. We know that something gets a strong way of being established when it's done 3 times. So for 3 years in a row now, we've been Farbrenguen about this, the Rebbe said. And therefore we see that this is already significant. Okay. This year it's 80 years. It's 80 years being Big Buddha, Shmoinim Shona ben Shmoinim Big and I believe it was Rabbi Ende who mentioned that Moshe Rabbeinu was 80 years old when he came to redeem the Jewish people from Egypt. 80 is very significant. And the 80th anniversary of the Rebbe's arrival is then the 50th anniversary, which we are also focusing on, which was 30 years ago. And the Ende, I would like to also focus on the 30th anniversary, which was 50 years ago. And I haven't seen it yet been focused on. So the Ende will try to look at that too. We are in the Chodesh Sivan, the Rebbe said. It's Yarchet Lisoi. It is the 3rd month. We are a people that is associated with 3s. Everything is in 3. That's where you know where they got it from, the people who they named the city for. The 3, right? Orient Lisoi, and the Eberster, the Yidden, and the Torah are the bond of the 3. Torah, Avodah, Gemilus, Chesodim, everything is the 3. So Sivan is the 3rd month. And in this month, we have this day. It's also always right before Chodesh Tammuz. And on several of the occasions when the Rebbe spoke, he said something very phenomenal, and it connects also to this day. All the years, we always looked at the 4th month, which is Tammuz, as a very sad month. But regarding our generation, we as Chassidim, we have called it the Chodesh HaGeula, a month of redemption, not a month of mourning, not a month of sadness, not a month of focusing on that, but a month of focusing on redemption, on Geula, because the Rebbe's Rebbe, father-in-law, the Rebbe, was freed from prison, from exile, all in the month of Tammuz, as he was born in the month of Tammuz. His own little personal redemption. Well, I don't know how that can be considered redemption. Things were good, there was miracle already. I don't know how this all works, but that's beyond my pay grade. In the very same Farbrenguen that we watched earlier, where the Rebbe spoke of the sacrificial self-sacrifice of his Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, in that Farbrenguen, the Rebbe said that each and every year that increases, that goes by, it's stronger. The Rebbe himself is stronger than it's ever been before. This is a phenomenal thing. It could be a tough thing for us to see. How can we look at this? How can we bring this into our lives? And the Rebbe said many times that when God created the world, He created time, space, and the Bechir HaNidroim, the chosen one of the creation, the human being. We call that otherwise Olam Shona Nefesh, space, time, humanity. And everything in the world is associated with this. We live in the realm of time and space. And it is our task to elevate this world, to elevate humanity. And God gave us this task with a developing world, because when He created the world, like we say in Kiddush every Friday night, Asher Bora Elikim La'asais, like Rashi says in Sake, He gave us the world to make and to better, and like some of our friends like to call this Tikkun Olam. I don't know if you have that issue over here. Where I come from, we have to put up with that sometimes. The Tikkun Olam. Make sure that cats have food. Things like that. Okay. Anyway, it is one of the mitzvahs. The Rebbe actually once spoke about the fact that, maybe more than once, the smartest people in the world who committed the greatest atrocity to the Jewish people in the last generation, they had these laws against animal cruelty. That was very important, but I digress. Let's go back to Chafetz Chaim. So this world is developed, and we went through a history, and we had our first Beis HaMikdash, right? This is not a history lesson, so we put that in place. Second Beis HaMikdash, Golos, Pogroms, and then we had the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov established the Hasidic movement, Chassidus. And then the Alter Rebbe made Chassidus Chabad. And we all know the story, but it's important just to review it for a moment. Mentioned hundreds of times by the Rebbe, if not 1,000, I didn't count. If somebody wants to, they should count. And they won't see all of them anyway. The Baal Shem Tov, on Rosh Hashanah, went for a trip, a journey. His soul went on high. How this is done is also beyond our pay grade. It was such a good trip that the Baal Shem Tov writes in the letter, he says, I actually thought that I was already there. He said, I thought that my soul already left this world. He thought he had already come to the Olam, the next world, the Olam. That's what he writes in the letter, the same famous letter. And he says, it was interesting there, and I'm looking around, I'm going to see. I don't think it was like the Rebbe said in the Sikha, like about the Friedrich Rebbe that he was looking around to find where that minister's office was. I didn't see how he said that in Portuguese, Anyway, he says he was looking around until he came to the Heichal of Mashiach, the chamber of Mashiach. He said, oh, it's to meet you, Mashiach. Nice to see how things going. Can you tell me, please, when you're planning on coming to this here, to the physical world down there, in the Masia? He says, yeah, sure, certainly, Baal Shem Tov. And he quotes a pasuk. The pasuk is said by Reb Shlomo HaMelech. And the pasuk is, Chutzu chutza, when your well springs will be spread. Explaining what that means. One of those occasions is that Farbrenguen in Tafshin Memvo in 1986 that we mentioned briefly earlier. And it's in that kuntris that you saw that the Rebbe distributed. Actually, I was a little earlier by Minchen Maidev. My friend from Yeshiva, Rabbi Ashkenazi, had it for show and tell. He showed the kuntris there very nicely. The Rebbe gave. I actually happened to have had the schus to be part of the guys who put it together. And what a shock, what a surprise. We were a group of Bachrim just wanting to, bring about an awareness and a koch. For the translator, that means we spatial, like the David used to say. We spatial, a koch. To focus, to be involved in this day. And the Rebbe allowed it to be printed, but no one imagined that the Rebbe would give it out. And there's something so important in that kuntris, so phenomenal, that is the message. And we'll talk about that after. Let's first talk about one of the sichas that is in there. And I saw on several of the quote unquote WhatsApp Farbrenguen discussions about that sicha from Tafshin Memvov. Did the Rebbe edit it? Actually, it was given in. The Rebbe saw all of the material, but he gave permission for the booklet to be printed as is. He didn't change and didn't edit that sicha at all. So I said, there's no bigger editing of a sicha and giving an assurance of its authenticity and its importance than the Rebbe standing for 3.5 hours and with his holy hand distributing it to men, women, and children. And in the sicha, the Rebbe says that pasuk, and he focuses on each and every one of the 3 words, because everything in Torah, as the Rebbe learned from his holy father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, everything is important, everything is significant, every word in Torah is important, and everything is precise. So therefore, what it means that something has to be spread. And by connotation, if it's in one location, it's not accessible. It's only accessible to whoever can go to the location. Therefore, it takes work. It takes work to be able to purvey and to bring whatever it is, like we do in modern times. We know where I come from, they want to have local farmers. You should buy through the local farmers, so you shouldn't have to do a lot of driving. I don't know if they have that campaign here. But anyway, Lechashiyafutsu means it has to be brought out to a broader public. Now here the Rebbe focuses on the Mayon Asecha, the wellspring. We know halachically, a wellspring is the purest, direct from God, not adulterated by human hands or any input. The Mayon is the wellspring. And therefore, if someone were to purify themselves in the waters of a Mayon, of a wellspring, there's no limit, there's no measurement. Whereas a mikveh has to have a measurement of mem saw, 40 saw. By the way, that ain't so much. That's just, we'll leave that for the Rabbanim to go in. But there's a measurement. There's an amount that it has to be. A mayon, it's enough just to touch. Doesn't matter because it's attached, it's connected, it's alive. It is the mayon. And the Rebbe says, it doesn't mean that the waters will flow forth from the wellspring to quench the thirst of the thirsty that are far away, and have that is what is being transported, because then you don't need transportation. Then it's a river. It's just flowing. You're still attached. The Rebbe says the whole Mayon, the wellspring itself, is what is brought to the far reaches, and that's the next word, chutza. Chutza means a place where you would think that a Mayan can't be. It's scorching heat and should dry up. There are other reasons why you think it's not possible, but that's what it's about. And that's what the Mashiach told to the Baal Shem Tov. Now let's look ahead a little bit about this day, which just before we do that, any day, besides the fact that it should increase Yira Shemayim and bring something special, so that therefore it's a good thing to Farbrenguen. But when our own family is saved, then we make a party, we make a celebration. It's cause for a special day. And like it says in today's Rambam, everything's by divine providence. Rambam is one of the only things that the Rebbe, if not the only thing, that the Rebbe gave a quantified instruction to do every single day. The Rebbe, of course, gave us many, many things. And we can bring about this some other time, and we can debate this. But possibly the only takuna that the Rebbe instituted is the learning of the Rambam every single day, whether it's 3 prakim or 1 perek or the Sefer HaMitzvos. And in today's Rambam, you see how the Rebbe used to mention it, we're coming up on the Siyam Rambam, which is going to be this Sunday, which is a phenomenal thing in and of itself. The first Siyum being on the Rebbe's birthday, and the 40th Siyum on Gimel Tammuz. Whatever the significance of that, I'm going to leave for the big Dorshei Shumans, for the ones who really know everything, from the Yoidas Elyon. But the fact is, it's certainly significant that the 40th Siyum, that's Bina, etc., is on Gimel Tammuz. Be that as it may, in today's Rambam, it says about the Chacham that Hakol Kroivov, everybody is related. It's our father and mother who were saved. So for that alone, without all this other significance, it's enough for us to Farbrenguen on this day and have a great simcha, because they were saved, literally, the Nes HaAtzolah. But that's just the very bottom. That's the given. That the children and the grandchildren and the family of the Rebbe and the REBBETZIN get together on such a day for us to say, oh, that's why it's so beautiful. We come to it's not sister city, the same city, and we see such a beautiful thing, how inspirational that is in and of itself. And hopefully they'll figure out also how to deal with this other business that's been hindering. Where I come from, you already don't have to wear the mask. It's official. So the good news is that's coming too. But I digress. So where was I up to? So the Rebbe said that the whole Mayan has to be brought and accessible to everyone. I heard one of the speakers speaking earlier, I believe it was Rabbi Libersohn, and the good news is, like I said, I didn't understand all that Portuguese. But we find many times in the Mamorim, and there's the Mokher, the source of this is that the Rebbe Rashab said that Matan Torah will not be twice. Even when Mashiach comes, and we're going to have the fulfillment of the prophecy and promise of Torah Chadosha Me'iti Teitze, that we'll have Torah in a new format, in a stronger way, in a way that we've never had it before. It's not going to be the revelation of Matan Torah. That's been there, done that. It'll never have to happen again. It could never happen again, because that was such a great revelation. There will be other revelations in a different degree, and we don't understand exactly what that means. But the Rebbe spoke about this many times, and it's in many Mamorim. We'll get to the Mamorim soon. Nevertheless, we see an Uysprach, we see an expression by the Frierdiker Rebbe, speaking about that at a certain point, and the Rebbe takes off on this, that there was a Matan Torah in the Chatzi Kader Hatach, in the lower hemisphere. By the way, usually when we say lower hemisphere and upper hemisphere, we mean like here where we are today, where it's becoming winter or it is winter. By the way, this ain't no winter. Let me tell you. This doesn't resemble winter in any way. The other one is where we have winter. Come back when you have 40 below zero, the frozen chosen, then we'll know. I think when you translate it, it doesn't rhyme, frozen. Anyway, the Chatzi Kader HaTachten we look at as the equator. When I was a bacher, I was in Australia for half a year teaching and learning and shlichus. And I went to a store once and I saw they sell a globe. And in that globe, Australia is on top. And the rest of the world is wherever it comes out. It's a globe. But anything like it says Chassidus, something which is round, ask any 5-year-old kid, why do you eat round challah on Rosh Hashanah? Because it has no beginning and it has no end. It's round, right? Something which is round doesn't have a top and a bottom. But nevertheless, everything is relative, right? In Minnesota, there was once an advertising campaign on the billboards. I'll just say 2 of them. One of them said, why did the kamikaze pilot wear a helmet? Okay. The other one said, do the people from Australia call us the land up over? So now, nevertheless, Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, the Makom HaMikdash, Kodesh HaKadoshim, is the Merkaz, it's the center of the world. Man was created from where his atonement will come from. How did it get from there to Turkey, where Gan Eden was? This is already, again, beyond my pay grade, but it was done. So the top of the world is Eretz Yisrael. Everything on the other side is the Chatzi Kadar HaTachti. Matan Torah happened on that side of the world. So in this, we share United States and South America, North America are all on the same Chatzi, the same half of this. And that's a place that was the last frontier, the final frontier, is the best way to put it. And you would think, well, wait a minute. The Rebbe arrived in America, and he said, and I heard somebody mention it earlier, that America is nicht anders. America is no different. What did he mean by that? He meant to say that not like all the people who said they're coming to the golden Medina, the golden country, they're going to be able to do whatever we want now. No. We could have a yeshiva there. We could live, we could transplant some of the amenities and novelties of the old country to the new land. So he said America is nicht anders. But why did he think that America is different? Why should we have to negate that? When something has to be negated, that means there's certain facts to it. America was not fertile land for a Mayon, especially in those days, and maybe now even more. And nevertheless, the first step was to make the yeshiva. That was done in 1940 on Yud Adar Sheni, the day after the arrival of the Frierdiker Rebbe. But only over a year later, when our Rebbe and our REBBETZIN came, did the Rebbe's Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, establish the 3 organizations with which they will bring the final redemption. The day that the Rebbe came is when that was established. And the Rebbe said it in as many words. And he did it in as many actions. If you want to look what happened here. Friends, on that day was established the Merkaz L'Inyonei Chinuch, the Machne Yisrael, Kani Hoytoy the Kahos. And here in this august body of people, we don't have to go into the significance of each one of those organizations, but we'll just talk a little bit about it. The Merkaz L'Inyonei Chinuch, the central organization for matters of education, the educational arm of the Lubavitch movement, as the Rebbe called it, was established. And the other was the social, educational, or religious work, Machne Yisrael, and the Torah itself, the Kahos, the Karni Hoy Torah. That the Rebbe established and led, like the Rebbe said then, he said a story about his Rebbe in the lifetime of his Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, when he went on Mesiras Nefesh. We heard the Sikha before. And he said he wasn't a Nasi, but he was the Nasi. At that moment, when he did that work, he was the Nasi. And the Rebbe brought the proof from the Talmud and from the Poskim that when a man sends another man to marry a certain woman for himself, The other guy is not the guy who's getting married. It's the first guy who sent him. But nevertheless, they're one person. So the Rebbe had for 9 years, he was standing at the helm of these three fundamental institutions. And when the Rebbe became a Rebbe in 1950, that didn't change. The Rebbe continued this through his Nesius, through his leadership. The same three organizations which he led. If you wanted to know, you wanted to get an answer from the Rebbe, you wanted to do anything, where did you go? To the Americas. It was also known as the Mazkiris. That same little room where the Rebbe's holy office itself, the Rebbe used to share it with others. And when you walk into 770, on your right side, you have the Mazkiris. That's really the original office of the Americas. And then the Rebbe's holy room. And with these tools, the Rebbe then set up slowly but surely, in an ever-growing fashion, the imbuing of this world with the Torah, with the mechanism of bringing about the true full redemption through Moshe came. This was the way that the Rebbe was bringing the Mayan, like the Rebbe said, the complete Mayan, the wellspring, the actual wellspring, to the chutzah, to the outside. But let me ask a Nadish question. You know, and we said that it's stronger now than it was, more alive now than it was, more active now than it was. When it was 50 years ago, it was 30 years ago, the Rebbe gave a kuntris, the Rebbe spoke. And this is not the elephant in the room, but it has to be addressed. What's this about? And when we were so busy and preoccupied and occupied with the excitement of growing and living with the Rebbe, these subtleties flew right by us, way over our head. So let's pick up that kuntris and look. Could you imagine that the Rebbe gives out with his holy hand to infants and women and children and men, Sivan, doesn't matter, whoever chose to come, a booklet. And in the booklet, there are the headlines of his own biography, the Toldos, like we had it in the beginning of the Hayom Yom, but it was updated till almost that year. The Rebbe is giving this to every chassid, to each and every chassid. And then the Rebbe is also giving not only these siches and mamurim, but there's also a brief skira. How do I know who says skira? Because I think that was the only thing I changed in what was written there. To change what it was called. I can't remember what it said before. But it was an overview of the story of the Rebbe's being delivered from the hands of from the claws of the Nazis in Machshema. And the Rebbe is giving this to each and every individual. He's waking us up. Look at this, look what it's about. But to be able to see some of the significance, let's go back to the celebrations, or celebrations is the wrong word. But let's see how things were marked 50 years ago. You know, it says 50 years is a yovel, a jubilee. As a matter of fact, when the Rebbe gave out that kovetz 30 years ago, it was 50 years since his being saved. A yovel is a significance because it's considered la'olam. A jubilee means it's something forever. If something is 50 years, it's eternal. So we have now the opportunity to learn Chassidus from 40 years ago. That's that number again, 40, where it says indeed that till 40 years, a person can't really get it. You don't get it. You don't get it what your Rebbe was saying until 40 years. And of course, that comes from the famous Gemara. Moshe Rabbeinu said, God gave you today a heart to perceive and eyes to see and ears to hear. That was after they were there already 40 years, they started to get it, after all the trials and tribulations. So when something is 40 years, it has that potency and that power and that potential. But 50 years ago, on the Rebbe's birthday, the Rebbe said a mimer, a very famous mimer, an earth-shattering mimer, a fundamental mimer, a classic mimer, and the Rebbe edited it subsequently. And in that mimer, by the way, it's one of only two mamorim, two discourses. Maybe there's more. I might be wrong on this statistic. It's not a statistic, of course, precise. Where the Rebbe made his own Dibur HaMaschil. The Rebbe began a mimer with a verse that other Rebbeim hadn't begun a mimer with. And of course, we have here a special group of Tamimim. They know that I'm referring to the mimer of V'yei Mashti Asayim. Let's move aside for one moment. Today, when things are stronger, more alive, and more active, there are so many different types of hashpa'ah that we can get from the Rebbe. We could read a letter, we could learn a letter, we could see a picture, we could see a video, we could listen to a broadcast, we could learn a shir, a sicha. In siches itself, there are different kinds of siches. A sicha from a Farbrenguen, a sicha of Likutei Siches. I'm not going to get into all this now for this oilam, we all know. And then there's the mimer. Why do I want to say the mimer? Because always I wanted to see a mucker, a source in the Rebbe, something that we don't have to be rocket scientists. Our Rebbe did not display drama. Okay, for lack of another term, let's use some psychobabble terms, drama, right? I don't know if they use that around here, but the teens, drama, I don't want drama. Our Rebbe didn't do drama. There was a chassid who came in 1952. He heard about the new Rebbe, and he came in, he went to a mincha. After mincha, he told somebody, I'm a chassid. What happened? What happened? You saw the light on a mincha? Yes. What did you see? I saw that he davens like a regular Jew. We all saw this. The Rebbe never picked up his hands and shook and went like this in the middle of davening. He wasn't busy catching angels. He wasn't, not to say that that's not holy. That's very holy, but if holy people do it. And it's significant. But our Rebbe did everything very regular. We saw him take the lulav, regular stuff. With the sukkah, he did this. He did everything in a plain way. But there was one exception. Okay, I'm not talking about the Rebbe, when the Rebbe was freilach, let's say Simchas Torah, other times, Simcha Gluya, because again, that's not drama. That's the way it's supposed to be. But there was one exception. In the Farbrenguen, when even those of us who live in brick homes, as the Pisgum says, and we can't differentiate and see what's holy and what's special. When it came time for the mimer, suddenly everything changed. The Rebbe would nod to Rabbi Yoel Khan, meaning that he's going to say a mimer. And Rabbi Yoel started to sing a preparatory tune, a niggin, the mimer niggin hachona, the preparation tune for the mimer. And then, in middle of the niggin, I don't know if everyone here knows this. When did everyone stand up? When Rabbi Charakov stood up. Rabbi Charakov would stand up, everyone stood up. Imagine a Farbrenguen, hundreds of people. The first thing that Rebbe used to do sometimes, when he saw people are standing, the Rebbe said, you could sit down with the people who were by the seats. Everyone stood up for the mimer. What you couldn't see, unless you were behind the Rebbe had a handkerchief, and he would tie it around his hand, hold something physical. And then when the mimer, he said it in a different tune, and he said it with his eyes closed. Chassidim gave different reasons. Maybe the Rabbeim said they don't want to look at let our stray thoughts bother this flow that's coming forth. Chassidim say it's like the Torah being given at Sinai, and that's a mimer. So a mimer is certainly that we could see the highest level. Somebody may come along here and say, well, there was a thing called a mimer ke'ein sicha. Certain memorim were said like a sicha. Where, by the way, the Rebbe used to take the handkerchief for that. The Rebbe's brother-in-law used to stand, representing everyone. And the Rebbe himself said, I have to smuggle in the chassidus It's got to get smuggled in. It's not always allowed. So the mimer, if you look at the mimer, this is the point that I want to get to, and then we'll take two examples. In every mimer, it either says explicitly, and this is in about 90%, Kol echad v'achas miYisrael. He says something for every single Jew. Sometimes it says b'chol zman u'b'chol mokem, in every place and every time. Doesn't always say that. And if it doesn't say it explicitly, it says it implicitly. The implication is that this is to each and every one of us. The Rebbe is gifting us with energy through Torah, in that it could become part of our life. And if you learn a mimer of the Rebbe and you focus, you look at it this way, not only what's the kasha and what's the answer, what does the Rebbe want and what's he explaining, but look at just what he's saying to you in your life, in your hardship. Like we said before, the world is time, space, and humanity. Just like in space, there's a Chatzi Kader HaTachten. There's the lower hemisphere that struggles. In time, there's the time of our day, of our life, when it is Chatzi Kader HaTachten. And so we have it in space, we have it in time, and we have it in ourselves. And that has to be imbued with the Mayan. And let the Rebbe help. So how are you going to do that? You can't go run and get a kuntris on Chof Chesidim today. So for that, we have to go back to the Maimer Vashti Yosef. In that Maimer, the Rebbe says he quotes a famous medrash. It's a long Maimer, so we're going to cut to the chase. We're just going to talk about the beginning and the end. And then we'll finish off with what was 50 years ago. And then we'll start the Chabad. So in that Maimer, the Rebbe says the medrash says that the people were going on a trip and they were coming to the place where the king was, and this guy says, I want to go see this minister or this ministerium. I want to check out this and this part of the kingdom. And this one says, oh, but this is where the real action is, where the financial thing is. And this is, I want to see the transportation minister because I have issues. The bridges in my town are lousy, right? And this one says, I want to see this and I want to see that. Then there was Pikech Echad, one smart guy, who says, no. I just want to go see the king. I want to see the king. I want the king. And the Rebbe explains it in many different levels. But if you look at the very end of the Maimer, the Rebbe says that you can get the king. We can have a fusion with the king himself through the Torah and through the Hashpah. We have to work to get to this level. And this is the time, this is the Chatzi Kader HaTachten in time. At that time, we were in Chatzi Kader HaElyon 30 years ago, and 40 years ago, and 50 years ago. But now we're at the part in our lives where we may think we're in Chatzi Kader HaTachten. We're in the lower hemisphere. We don't see all these Giluyim. But the Rebbe says Giluyim, the revelations are chopped liver. That's a paraphrase. He says the essence of the Torah is what you can have. All you have to do is want to take it. So now let's go to 50 years ago, where it doesn't even say in the Hamorah, in the Maimer, that it's Chof Chesidim, and it's the day that the Rebbe was saved. But the Rebbe says a Maimer, Shlach lecha anoshim v'yasura seretz Canaan, this past Shabbos, the Shabbos that blessed this day. And in the Maimer, the Rebbe brings the Medrash. And the Medrash says, this word, v'yasuru, is a very interesting word for spying out. Usually we say the word meraglim. They're even called the meraglim, right? They're called meraglim in other places. A spy is called a meragel. What's the v'yasuru? And there's two different midrashim, and the Rebbe comes up with the v'yasuru come from three different types of words. It means to check it out and identify. It means that's like, and that's a little bit like the modern Hebrew term, tayaru, tourism, which actually the English word is like the Hebrew, v'yasuru, tour, right? V'yaturu, to go touring. But see what it is. And then tiur, describe it, figure out what it is. And then yisroin, something additional, something increases. And the Rebbe goes in to say that the Torah is increased through diligence, although it may not have been easy. It says in the Gemara that Rabbi Yochanan was crying when Reish Lakish died, because Reish Lakish used to ask him so many questions, and he was a Talmud HaMachkimas Rabbi. He was a student that made the teachings of the teacher smarter, like something of light that comes when there's darkness. The Rebbe gives many examples. The Rebbe goes on to the rest of that Gemara, how they replaced, there was another Talmud, and everything that Rabbi Yochanan said, he said, I will find you a Braisa, another part of Talmud that proves your point. He says, that's what I need from you. He says, the Reish Lakish used to ask 24 questions on everything that I said. And that made it so much more strong. The Rebbe said, every single day we have the darkness first. We have and that has to be looked at. The Asuru identified it. And then we have the Torah. We are taught that first you have to daven, then you have to learn, then you go out into the world. This is in the schedule of your day. It's also how to approach a problem. And when you learn the Torah, you have to imbue yourself with the strength and the courage, and you could do it. And then you come into the land. And then you're able, so the Rebbe says, here's an interesting thing. On Minche, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, in the temples that are led by the Apikurim of Islam, they find some very nice passage to learn something esoteric to read from the Torah. Because it's not nice on a day of Yom Kippur to read what the Chazal said to read on Yom Kippur. There's a lot of not nice stuff there about the relationships that you're not allowed to have. It's not a nice thing to talk about in Yom Kippur, right? But there's a reason that we read. And there's a reason Api Nigla, and then from here you can see the reason Api Chassidus. Kemaise Eretz Mitzrayim, like the decrepit deeds of Egypt don't do. Uchemaise Eretz Canaan, the promised land, also was a very low down place, like our lower hemisphere. But that's our job, to go there and not do what they taught, but to imbue that with holiness. And now look at what the Rebbe said on the 30th anniversary of his arrival. Look at the Rebbe's life, had these three tkufas. The Rebbe's life had these three things. He had his upbringing, then he had the time when he was in Europe, studying, like it says in the biography, his own biography that he gave each and every one of us, that he was Nechbel HaKelim, he was focusing on Torah study then. And then he came here. And the moment he came here, that all transferred to making the world into the world, finalizing his goal of bringing Mashiach, that he said he already started to think about as a child going to preschool or infant school. And this was his goal. Each and every one of us has that in our life. And each and every one of us has the Chatzi Kader Atachnu in ourselves, in our family, in our community, in our country, in our world. And the Rebbe said, comes Chav Ches Sivan, it's Koyach in this third month. Chav Ches, it's not just by mistake. And this gives us the strength that each and every one of us, you have to take it. You have to take your vitamins, but the vitamins are there. You have to take what it is. And the Rebbe says that on this day, that it was indeed a Matan Torah, a format of Matan Torah. You may say, hey, this is a contradiction to what it says that Matan Torah won't happen again. But it's the beginning of the fulfillment and the realization of the prophecies of bringing Torah to where Matan Torah hadn't happened before. And this, my friends, you can see today, in today's day and age, that Torah has never been so widespread and accessible like it is on this day. And today we know more Chassidus than we knew yesterday. And this is Nigla and this is Chassidus. And this is in a phenomenal way. And that's what 80 years means, that the Rebbe gave each and every one of us on the last Chav Chasidim that he was talking to us. He gave us this kuntris. And he said, instead of making a hefsek, an interruption like Rabbi Goldberg said, and we saw the video, let's make a continuation. There is no hefsek. The Rebbe said clear on that day that he gave the kuntris, we are going to continue this. That's what it's about. And then we'll be united with the Rebbe. Neshamas begufim, may it happen immediately. L'chaim. The next day. There won't be a translator. It's Parshas Koirach. So it's time for a short story, but it's a very important story. And it comes with a little shtickle toide. But the story is illustrative of our Rebbe. And allow me to share it. The Rebbe spoke a sicher about this week's Parsha, and he said, you know, and Rashi really asks this question too, but the answer begs for more clarification. Why is it that when Koirach rebelled and did all what he did, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't pray for him? Instead, he tells to God, don't listen to them. I didn't take one donkey from them. Suddenly, this is the same Moshe that when the Jews did idol worship, right? He begged for their forgiveness and not to destroy them. And he told God, by the way, if you don't forgive them, I'm out. Erase me from this book. When they did the biggest fundamental sin, clear avodah zarah. The same Torah describes him a few weeks ago in the Parsha as the Ish Moshe Onomoid Mikol Adam Hashal Pnei Adon, the greatest, most humble man that was on the face of the earth. And Chassidus explains this, and Nigla explains it. That man, that Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he knew how great he was, he felt that someone else could do it better if they were given his faculties. And he was really humble, etc. And so many other times we find in the 40 years that the Jews rebelled and they sinned, and Moshe Rabbeinu asked God to forgive them. We had it in last week's Parsha. We had it 2 weeks ago's Parsha with this slug. He said, this is not going to be, he says, Eibishter, it's not good PR. This is not good public relations if you're going to destroy them. It's not good for the PR. They're going to say, the neighbors are going to say, you took them out to kill them in the desert, and he gets God to forgive them for that sin. Suddenly, one guy starts up, and he says, oh, you're a big shot. You became the one in charge, and you gave your brother to be the Kohen Gadol. Oh, suddenly Moshe's upset. Moshe's upset, and he tells God to don't listen to them. And The Rebbe says this makes no sense. And the Rebbe explained it up in Nigle. The Rebbe came up with one answer. The Rebbe said that Yom Kippur can atone for every single sin. Even the best sins, or shall we call them the worst sins, Yom Kippur can atone for them. There's only one sin that Yom Kippur can't atone for, and that is transgressing Yom Kippur. That Yom Kippur can't atone for. You got to figure out another form of tshuva. And the reason for that is because you negated the atonement in and of itself. You negated what could help you. So then that thing can't help you anymore. It's out. It's disqualified. This is the sikha that the Rebbe said. So the Rebbe said, Moshe Rabbeinu also. Because Koirach negated Moshe, Moshe couldn't ask for his forgiveness anymore. Profound thought. A profound explanation of the Rebbe. Vad l'hafotza sichas, the ones who prepared the talks of the Rebbe, prepared this profound sikha for the Rebbe to edit and it should get published, so that once and for all we should know, why did Moshe Rabbeinu not stick up for Koirach and his group? And the Rebbe got the sikha and gave it back, and he said to them, burn this, burn it. Take this thing and burn it. We shouldn't know about this anymore. What? They didn't make it up. This is the sikha that the Rebbe said. Rabbi Leibel Shapiro tells the story. He was part of that group. Rosh Yeshiva Miami was on Yudshtar. And the reason is because the Rebbe felt that even for such people, the Rebbe could help. Even people who negate the Rebbe, even people who do whatever they do, are still able to be helped by the Rebbe. And this is the Rebbe that we're talking about, that came here on Chav Chesidim. And that on this day, the Rebbe then, although they were already trying to have the Rebbe come to America earlier, before things got bad, and the Rebbe was going to, and of course we could say if my grandmother would have had wheels, she would have been a trolley car, right? If. But the way the Seder was, that the Rebbe joined the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe's Rebbe, for 2 months. Tishrei and Pesach time, and then a few times in between, whatever it was. And that's how it would have stayed if things were good. But instead, and this is the other piece that I heard someone talk about earlier, the Shliach L'chol Daitecha. We have to make it part of our own life, and therefore the Rebbe made it part of his own life. To join the effort and to take over the effort and to hand the effort to us, being with us at every moment. Like he says there, the Nasi is there, but when you're doing the work, you're the Nasi. That thought and that idea is very awesome. It's a great privilege that comes with great responsibility. And each and every one of us has this power. And that is the power of Chav Chesidim, to come to the Chatzi Kadar HaTachton, to leave the comfort zone, to leave what you've been used to, and that is even Beruchnius, certainly Beruchnius, and come and get involved. So l'chaim to each and every one of us, that we should get involved in the Chatzi Kadar HaTachton, in the lower hemisphere, whether it's in our lives, in our community, in our family, in ourselves, and imbue it and invigorate it with the mayim that we are attached to, and we just have to transport completely. L'chaim. The only guy I know.